Drop it on the random.
What up, y'all? Welcome to another edition of That Time in Hip Hop, a podcast about history, the nostalgia, but more importantly, the preservation of hip hop music and culture. I am your host, Vegas of Hip Hop Now podcast. With me, as always, the homie Tony of IntoTheDome.com. What's good, bro?
Hey, look, man, everything's good. I have some ginger and cayenne and turmeric kombucha. Oh, man, it's feeling good, brother.
Yeah, just a little Douce mix. Kind of came out ill. See how the color, like, that's some decent aroma. If you are watching or listening for the very first time, this is what we usually do here. You know, we have a little sippy, you know, and sometimes it's water, whatever. But we do talk about hip hop history, whether that be about albums, artists, events, you know, moments, whatever. Like we done talked about Jay Electronica and when we thought he was going to come out and shock the world, and he really didn't. We talked about the fall of Rockefeller. We talked about Little Kim, Foxy Brown, Mr. P, Too Short, Jermaine Dupri. It's so much content that we've already covered, and we got even more coming up for you. And last week we did Straight Outta Compton and hip hop biopics. You know what I'm saying? Talk about that movie in depth, and you know, some of the hip hop biopics that was, I guess, notable, maybe if only by name or artist that it was about. But check that out. It's on the B-Roll Network on YouTube, or also if you just like audio, you can listen to the audio podcast. All you got to do is search wherever you listen to podcasts for Hip Hop Now podcast. And in that same feed is That Time in Hip Hop. We got like 40-something shows. So there's plenty of time there for you to just sit back and reminisce if you was around at that time, or learn if you need a first-hand account of some of the things that went down. We got you covered. So what we like to do right now is a little segment called This Week in Hip Hop and Tone, man. This one is close to home. This Week in Hip Hop, September 13th, 1994, the 25th anniversary. This Week in Hip Hop, the Notorious B.I.G.'s debut album, Ready to Die, dropped. Bad Boy Records. Tone, I mean, we gonna run the gambit. This is 25th anniversary, so we got to. But when was the first time you heard Biggie? And then what were your thoughts when you first heard the debut album, Ready to Die?
The first time I heard Biggie was probably on that Who's the Man soundtrack, Party and Bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But it's been so long ago. I remember him also doing a verse on that Dollar My Baby or something like that. So it was early, like around 92-ish. And then, of course, like early, 94, I heard Juicy. And I was like, man, this dude from Who's the Man soundtrack, yeah, Biggie Smalls, like, yeah, he can rap, you know what I'm saying? So I was like, yeah, dude is nice, you know what I'm saying? Dope voice, cadence, I mean, everything. I was like, he got the flow. Of course, you don't know what to expect, because I always say, okay, somebody drop a dope single or soundtrack cut, let me hear the album, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know it's real until I hear the album. Even though Juicy was something special, I remember they played on the radio a lot down here in North Carolina. You know, he said it was all a dream. So for any hip hop fan, the things he was talking about was Salt and Pepper, Heavy Dip, and the Limousine, and all that, Marlon Marl and Funk Flex. It was some hip hop shit. So people talk about Juicy like some commercial stuff, but it was a real hip hop song with talk about Heavy D in them. You know what I'm saying? So it was like Love Bug, Starsky or whatever. So I was like, okay, dude, know his hip hop history. Let's see what happens when this album drops. Mm-hmm. I know it. I was in college, man. I went to the record store. Let me get that Ready to Die by that Biggie Smalls. You never know what to expect, vague. I put the Walkman. We had Walkmans back then. I put the joint in there, and I heard the little intro with the baby being born, all that. That's whatever. I don't really care about intro. Well, I didn't care about intros that much at that time. Maybe I didn't appreciate them, but Things Done Changed came on. Remember back in the days, when niggas had waves, Gazelle shades, corn braids. I was like, okay. You know, I was like, man, this right here. By the time I got to the end of that song, man, I rewinded it back. Let me do this again. So then, of course, you going through the album, Give Me the Loot, and, you know, Warning, and the Red Dot title track. And, you know, I remember back when I first heard that line, your face, my feet, they meet, we stumping. I'm ripping them seats, Tallahassee to Compton. And I was like, oh, okay, so he's there. He ready. So I get all the way through it, of course, and, you know, Suicide Thoughts, you know, unbelievable, all that. And I was like, man, this might be an instant classic. I was like, okay, so I haven't heard that much over the last couple of years that made me feel like this that fast. And it kind of made me think about the show tonight when I read Kumo D's book, There's a God on the Mic, the 50 Greatest MCs. And he was talking about Biggie, and the first time he heard Ready to Die. And I agree with the stuff that Kumo D was saying. I had never heard nothing like Biggie. And I was like, wow, this is refreshing. I mean, I'm at a loss for words right now. I don't want to take too much time. Vegas, you from New York, man. When you first, forget Juicy, we know you heard that. When you heard Ready to Die, man, what was you thinking?
Well, the crazy part is, like, when I first heard Biggie, it was on Heavy D's album Blue Funk. It was on a track called A Bunch of Niggas that had I know, what a song. But it had like Guru was on there, a couple of people was on there. And I just remember Biggie's verse stood out to me. Because for one, I didn't even know who that was. And two, I just kept rewinding that verse. You know what I'm saying? I bring drama like I spit on your mama. Really dope. And I remember a hip hop fan thirst came over me for a second, where I was just like, yo, I got to find out more about this cat. Like, who the hell is that? And I remember like going through the source one time, you know, when I got and I saw a picture of him for the first time. But it was crazy because I didn't know he was fat, because the picture was like in the studio and it was dark, and then, you know, Biggie was crazy black. So he was like blending through the background. And, you know, in the caption it said, you know, from left to right, and it said Biggie Smalls. I'm like, oh, that's that Biggie Smalls cat. But I hadn't seen nothing else. So I was just kind of like, damn, like there's nothing on this dude. Maybe he's just like one of them, you know, 90s, they had a lot of one verse dudes that we just never saw like an album or anything. But then I remember like I heard Party and Bullshit. And I was like, yo, he got a song now, and the song is crazy, and it's hood, and it's so, you know, to me, it was so Brooklyn, because, you know, around that age, you know, it was when you was going to like house parties, and most of the time I wasn't going because they were getting shot up. You know what I'm saying? But I remember, you know, like it was like a verse, then I heard the song. Then in New York, for the most part, DJ Mr. C, Big Daddy Kane's DJ, also, you know, was known for being on Hot 97 later on, and also known to discover Biggie Smalls. He put out a mixtape called The Best of Biggie. And when I tell you, Tone, that mixtape was like an album for people, even though it was a couple freestyles and songs that Biggie was featured on, like R&B records and stuff like that, and other records, also some unreleased stuff like Dreams, you know what I'm saying? Just Playing or whatever. That was on there. So that was like being like throughout Brooklyn, that was what everybody was playing. Everybody had it. Everybody was playing it. You would hear that intro to that freestyle on the mixtape.
Yeah.
Biggie, you really, all this momentum, all this stuff I'm mentioning, all this momentum was on him. And I remember when Juicy came out, and I I was kind of disappointed because I had heard all this hard stuff. It was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like you said, man, pictures on the wall. I used to do that back in the days. Word Up magazine, everybody did that. But then when I honestly didn't know what to expect, and the intro, like you said, it set the tone, but it wasn't nothing different from what we had heard from any other album to really make us feel like, oh, this is about to be crazy.
Yeah.
Until you heard things, and you just felt like that was a signature song for a time in hip hop where things were just basically going to change. And as I went through the album, man, like song after song, you just started to feel like, yeah, I this is special. This is a classic. This is better than I expected. You know what I'm saying? So that was kind of my feeling on it. But let me ask you this, right? So, well, first of all, what are your favorite songs on that album?
Unbelievable, because I'm a Primo fanatic. Things done changed. Everyday Struggle, man. You know what? Everyday Struggle might be my favorite song on the album, man. Like, that's the one when I listen to it now, I always find myself rewinding Everyday Struggle, man. So unbelievable, Everyday Struggle. Things done changed. Of course, most people like Warning and all of that, man. But I want to say those are my favorite songs, man, with Everyday Struggle being the one right now in 2019 that if I'm on YouTube playing around, I might just type in Biggie Everyday Struggle and listen to it, man. Like, so I think those are probably my favorite songs, man. What about you?
My favorite songs, Things Done Changed, probably Unbelievable, and definitely hands down my favorite song. Like, it took me a minute to get there, but walking back to high school in the morning, it was probably the number one song I would just constantly play. I don't know what it did to me. It still does it to me now when I hear it. But Everyday Struggle, man, it was just something about that record. It's a feeling. It kind of basically like a different side of the story of Juicy. You know what I'm saying? The story of Juicy is kind of like I'm trying to make it in this world, whatever, as a rapper, and and get rich and get out of this predicament. And Everyday Struggle is more like trying to make it as a drug dealer, but to get out of the same situation is just a tougher road. And even though that wasn't my lifestyle, it connected with me big time. Just who did the production on that beat? Because is that Easy Mo B or Buck Wild?
Off the top of my head, I don't quite remember. You know what I'm saying? I don't quite remember, but I know it's a ill beat.
Yeah, because I think the beat has a lot to do with how that vibe kind of hits me. Like, as soon as the song comes on and you hear that music and them drums start to kick and the kicks start to come, and you hear the I Don't Want to Live No More. Sometimes I hear Death. Like, it just gets me every time, man. So on the 25th anniversary of Ready to Die being released on Bad Boy Records, Biggie Smalls' debut album, Tone, top 10 hip-hop albums of all time?
I did my top like 20 albums a couple of years ago, and if I'm not mistaken, I had Ready to Die around number 4, number 5. That's how high I praised the album because of the creativity, the wordplay, the way he could tell stories. He wasn't overly intricate like some MCs. Like, some people think you have to be so much depth and so many layers, but you lose listeners. And I think Biggie found a way to be very lyrical, but still be accessible to the listeners, man. And the production, and I always say this, to me, if you take off Friend of Mine and put in Who Shot You, I have Ready to Die possibly the top 3. That's how great I think the album is, man. So yeah, man, it's one of the GOAT albums from one of the GOAT MCs. And I listen to it to this day, 2019, just like it was 1994 again while I'm in college.
Yeah, man. Like Joe said, man, new rappers are cool, but we still bump Biggie. Like,
yeah,
that's timeless music, and I agree, man. That version of Ready to Die that does feature Who Shot You and Dreams, that wasn't the original album.
No.
That came later. We wish that's how it was released back then, because Who Shot You came out of nowhere when we had Ready to Die. And we like, well, wait a minute, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time from one of the greatest MCs of all time. And that's not just Brooklyn talking. But what do you think about that album? Did you buy that album? Did you like Biggie Smalls back in the days? Were you anticipating that album? If you were younger and you wasn't around, you know, what do you know about Biggie Smalls? You know what I'm saying? How do you feel about him? Yeah.
Quick thought.
Leave your comments in the comment section below, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. We both loved Everyday Struggle. It was produced by a production crew called the Blues Brothers. And that's the reason why I couldn't remember. Because I don't know who they are. You know what I'm saying? So a crew called the Blues Brothers produced Everyday Struggle. And I don't know any of their production credit. They don't have a highlight on Wikipedia where you can look at their production credit. I don't know who they are. So, you know, if anyone knows about the Blues Brothers who produced Everyday Struggle, please put a comment in the comment section on YouTube. I like to find out what else they did. I couldn't see anything else they did, but that was a dope beat.
And that's interesting because, like we said, that's a part of, you know, why we like the record, and for it to be this many 25 years later, and me and you to just basically agree that's probably our favorite song. We never really thought about, like, well, who produced that joint? Right. And that's that, you know, I don't know who that is.
I don't know who they are.
Like Tone said, man, leave your comments in the comment section. If you know you got some history, leave it there. This is all about a two-way conversation with us and other fans of hip-hop. Now, let's get into the main topic of the show, and we're going to keep it in that 90s era, but we're going to go to another group, put out a couple of classics. Tone, tell the people what we're here to talk about.
Man, you know, I'm excited today, man, because today we're here to talk about an album and a group that came out in the 80s, but this particular album came out in 1996, which for me is one of the top 3 or 4 greatest years in the history of hip-hop music. And we're talking about De La Soul's 4th album, Stakes is High. And I think it's the perfect title because I think for them, they feel like this is a crossroad in hip hop, with us having several years of gangster rap dominating the charts, and then a few conscious groups and artists started to come to the forefront in the mid 90s. And then them saying the stakes is high, saying, okay, this is where we are right now. Where are we going? And we want to assess hip hop for what it is right now, and also talk about what it can be, because we're not really feeling everything that's going on right now. So the stakes is high. You know what I'm saying? So I think that De La Soul, you know, was looking at the East Coast, West Coast thing that was still going on. It hadn't died down yet, because we're talking about this album dropped in the first week of July 1996. Now, we all know that 1996, Tupac had dropped All Eyes on Me that spring, and Death Row was still very powerful. Still had Nas, It Was Written, had dropped in that same month. Jay-Z, Reasonable Doubt dropped in that month. Biggie was still kind of popular. Yeah, Biggie was still kind of popular because of Junior Mafia and Lil' Kim hardcore album dropped that year, and they were still on the radio and things like that. So you had an influx of East Coast gems, and the West Coast and Death Row was still very popular. So when you have a group like De La Soul, they're able to look at both sides of the equation and say, you know what? I'm kind of sick of all this. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not just sick of the West Coast and things like that. But I'm kind of sick of some of the things I'm seeing on the East Coast because I feel like we're better than that and more authentic than that. So I'm gonna tell you, I know we'll get into some details. Pos and Dave on Stakes is High, they kind of took what they did on Balloon Mind State, even 3 Feet High and Rising and De La Soul is Dead, and combined it all in one on what I feel is their magnum opus and really win at everybody, man. You know what I'm saying? On Stakes is High. And I was just pleasantly surprised and also shocked at the lyrics in Stakes is High. We'll get to that, but I also want to make one more point. This is their 4th album, but their first album without Prince Paul. So they went into a whole direction production-wise, and they produced it themselves with two more artists who produced 2 songs, and we'll get to what I want to say right now. And it kind of helped push them to a lot of big production opportunities later, man. But yeah, Stakes is High, man, came in the middle of summer 1996 when you still had the Fugees that just dropped. You had Redman, you had Iron Man with Ghostface, you had, Hell on Earth. You had one of the greatest years, but again, you had Tupac with All Eyes on Me smashing on the East Coast with the Hit 'Em Up and a bunch of underground diss tracks that people didn't hear until he passed, but a lot of people in the rap game had heard these songs. You know what I'm saying? And they knew what Tupac was doing. And then you had Machiavelli that we'll get into that address Stakes is High. But man, just what did you think? De La Soul's 4th album coming up. What did you expect before it came out? And just any quick thoughts, Vay?
There was a lot going on in 1996, man. It was almost too much. You know what I'm saying? It was overwhelming. Not only the artist that was releasing music, like Tone said, but just the magnitude of the projects and how everybody lyrically was at a certain point, and it was like a lot of competitive tension, not just East and West, but just the fact that there was also a changing of the guard on the East Coast that had happened with with Illmatic and Ready to Die and Into the 36 Chambers and the Black Moon and like all of that had already occurred. So it was like a new wave that was going. I think I wasn't really checking for De La Soul, and it only was because I remember when Balloon Mind State, and I loved the first single, but around that time I didn't have money to buy everything. So it was more so like I was relying on magazines to convince me that I needed to get that over this or this over that. And like you said, man, It Was Written dropping, you got Reasonable Doubt dropping, you got all this stuff dropping, and I knew I was putting my money on those. So I was kind of like, all right, well, De La Soul got another album, whatever. Let me see what it's about. And I think with them, the singles really did it for me because they didn't sound like the De La I used to know. You know what I'm saying? They sound enhanced. They sound like a different group. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, wait a minute, this is De La? Like, this Pasta Noose is sounding crazy. Like its flows is just crazy, and his wordplay is like, this is the same De La? You know what I'm saying? So it was a thing where, like, of course, my attention was on all kinds of things. Tupac was running rampant in 96. You know what I'm saying? He was all over the place. Like, he was grabbing every headline, to be honest. And I stayed with mixtapes. And so for everything I couldn't have, if I couldn't have a full album, damn near I had it because I had a bunch of mixed. De La Soul was right up in there with the Tupac unreleased stuff, with the Jay-Z unreleased records and freestyles from Nas and The Firm and Biggie, and, you know what I'm saying, and Junior Mafia. Like, it was a dope time in hip hop. Like, I'm with you, Tone. Like, when you look back at 96 and look on this show, we probably already touched that year several times. And every time we are naming something else that was significant. But I remember when I actually got the chance to listen to this album again, I was shocked. I was kind of disappointed that it took me so long, even though it didn't take me that long, to actually listen to it. But man, you know, I was by De La Soul. Now, since we brought him up, and I know you on this, Tupac versus De La Soul. How the hell that happened? Now we know Tupac had beef with Biggie, and we know that eventually this beef with Tupac somehow got into a way with Tretch and pulling people off stages. What the hell happened?
Well, first with Tupac, I mean, you know, we remember Tupac when he was alive, unlike some young fans who might have read stuff, but if you knew Pac how he was back then in interviews and stuff, Pac was very observant. You know what I'm saying? So he paid a lot of attention. Pac loved East Coast. He loved hip hop, so he listened. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't get it twisted. He listened to De La Soul album. You know what I'm saying? Because when Pastor News said, like them West Coast kids, they keep throwing up signs, I hate a Buster, unless his name is Busta Rhymes. Now, when you think about that, Pac might have said, wait a minute now, y'all already had that video on Balloon Mindstick where y'all had the bald head dude and the chains and the tub and the mansion and all. Y'all already kind of, I feel like y'all did. They talked back then and they was kind of like, nah, we just, you know, we're looking at hip hop as a total, it's not against you. He like, yeah, I don't know, it's kind of against me, but I'm gonna chill for a minute. Then I hear Stakes is High, and you saying this like these West Coast kids throwing up signs, hey, the Buster, his name is Busta Rhymes. You know, then it's like, yo, okay, I think you kind of trying to play me. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's when Pac kind of got upset about De La Soul, because if I'm not mistaken, a year before that on Me Against the World, I want to say that he showed them some love on Nothing Like the Old School. You know what I'm saying? I think
he did.
So, I mean, I think that he felt let down. It's like, look, I bigged y'all up just last year. And now I feel like y'all throwing shots at me. You know what I'm saying? So that happened with Pac. Then it's funny, Baker, last night I posted a line from this title track, Stakes is High, on Twitter, just to get things going for the show tonight, to see how many people was up on this line from Dave on Stakes is High. Let me say this real quick. Dave said on Stakes is High, he said, I'm sick of bitches shaking asses. I'm sick of talking about blunts, sick of Versace glasses, sick of slang, sick of half-ass award shows, sick of name brand clothes, sick of R&B bitches over bullshit tracks, cocaine and crack that brings sickness to blacks. So he was talking about the Versace stuff. That's Biggie and all of them. You know what I'm saying? He's talking about the gangster rap stuff. He's talking about all the stuff he's sick of. You know what I'm saying? So I think that now Not About Nature might have got mad at a line Pac said in the intro of the album. I think he said something and mentioned Not About Nature, but I think he was using Not About Nature as an example in his rhyme. And I think that Tretch kind of took it to heart, because, I mean, Tretch was like that back then. And, you know, he felt like somebody going to play him, he going to say something. So, yeah, they went to a show, and I believe the confrontation and all the stuff like that. Now, let me say this. Just from people I know and in the industry and just conversations I've had over the years, but De La Soul ain't no suckers either. You know what I'm saying? So let's not. I know someone who knows them. You know what I'm saying? From Long Island, one of my friends from Long Island. So De La Soul, they might rap on some Me, Myself, and I, and Break It Down and all this shit, but they're really not soft like you think. You know what I'm saying? So even though they rap a certain way, don't get it twisted. So they didn't mind popping off, and on Stakes is High. You know, Dave talked about the industry, but Pastor Noose was kind of going at Cat's head. You know, a lot of people don't know that because they're not really listening to. They think about De La Soul different, but De La Soul are lyricists. So you listen to Pastor Noose on there, he going at everybody in a subtle kind of way, and so a lot of people listening, you can say, well, hey, maybe this dude talking about me. You know what I'm saying? So Not About Nature took it for. You know, took it to heart, and they had a confrontation, and I think they threw subliminals at De La, and they had issues for several years. You know, Tupac on Machiavelli, he said, niggas looking like Larry Holmes, flabby and sick, trying to play hate on my shit. And in the background, he said, look at De La Soul. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, that's on Against All Odds, people.
Oh, yeah.
That's just like Nas said, I can't believe I heard my name on the realest shit you ever wrote, on We Will Survive When I Am. So, De La Soul was on that too. You know what I'm saying? He was on their radar, man. And I think that because it was called Stakes is High, because it was De La Soul looking at the industry the way it was, throughout the album, they talked about gunplay. They talked about commercialism in hip hop. They talked about everything that they felt was wrong with hip hop, and that was a direct attack subliminally against most of the popular artists at that time, man.
Yeah, man. And I think for me personally, that was also part of the reason why I was hesitant, because ever since it looked like it started with Bad Boy. Like once Bad Boy success started to take off, and more rappers started to kind of follow their lead in regards to the type of beats they chose, because it wasn't everybody lyrics wasn't dumbed down. It was just the beats they was choosing, which were, like 80s hits or whatever, or in some cases 70s hits. And I think that's where I was just kind of like, nah, just do you. But I liked the way De La Soul did it. And maybe it was because it was De La Soul, maybe because it was coming from dudes who felt more righteous and pure to me and pure to hip hop, that I felt like if they say something about it, there's some good tensions behind it, as opposed to just straight up hating because you're not making a lot of money. To know that I don't think there's a lot of people that knew. There's some people even back then who didn't know that De La Soul was on Tupac's radar for beef as well. You know what I'm saying? Everybody always thinks it's just Biggie or it's just Nas and Jay-Z and East Coast, West Coast, but De La Soul was a part of that as well. Crazy to even think about, but nevertheless, it happened. It was a crazy time, 1996.
Yeah, you know what, too, man? It's like, and like I said, Pasta Noose actually, he had his moments when he threw some kind of shots, or what you could perceive as shots, like on the track 5, Din and It. Pasta Noose said, it's a brother from the East with the beats that be thorough. Now, I know that don't sound like it's a diss, but he's saying something about the East. Now, before the East Coast, West Coast, you didn't have to say East or West in your rhyme. Nope. But doing the East Coast, West Coast battle, you start saying, I'm from the East, or it's West Coast, whatever. You know what I'm saying? So he said it's a brother from the East with the beats that be thorough. So what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? And then also with the gunplay thing throughout the album, he talked about gunplay a lot, just like on the track Sunshine, the last track on the album, which is one of my favorite tracks of that year. He said the gun made a man out of pussies from around my way who usually wouldn't have a fucking thing to say. You know what I'm saying? Like, so he talking about how cats are getting brave because they got guns now. This gun talk, now y'all tough, but I knew cats who, before they got the guns around my way, they was pussies. This is what Pop was saying on this track. So I don't think a lot of people were used to De La Soul kind of coming so raw on Stakes is High, because on 3 Feet High and Rising, they were more the Daisy Age, you know what I'm saying, the consciousness, potholes in my lawn, me, myself, and I, Say No Go. Then I get the De La Soul is dead, and they talking about we're going to just kill ourselves and reinvent ourselves again because this rap shit is whack. So it's that ring, 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 and, all the stuff like that. And so then they get the Blue Mind State, and they kind of a blend of the first 2 albums. But they get to their 4th album, which is Stakes is High, and the beats are more brolic, man, you know what I'm saying? Old school term, you know what I'm saying? Very clean production, you know what I'm saying? It fit their rhyme style in 96. I think they transitioned into 96 perfectly, because you got to remember that summer, the Roots, Ill Death, Half-Life, Muddy Waters, Tribe Called Life. I mean, J-Rock, Dribble the Damage, the Wrath of the Math. I mean, all of this stuff was going on, and they didn't come out and sound like it was 1989 the debut album. They came in 96, and they flowed in 96 smoothly with the other dope releases that came out, and the rhyme play fit the production, man. And I just think they was raw. Dave showed a very, very lyrical side that people might have slept on. Pasta Noose was always on the underground, known as one of the doper MCs, but he kind of came out of his shell even more. You can watch him on the Stakes is High video. He's more animated. He's just going in. You know what I'm saying? So I think that De La Soul wasn't bullshitting in 96, man. And, and they caught the eye of a lot of people. They released an album that I still hold a high regard today, man. And I feel so good about it, man. I had a good time riding to it today. You know what I'm saying? And I'll listen to it today again all the way through. And it took me back to that time in '96 when so many great albums came out. And that was one of them that I went to the store and bought a physical copy. And I wasn't mad at my purchase.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was this the first time we heard Mos Def on an album, or the first time we heard him, or was it the Bush Babies feature? Because I can't remember which came first.
So I want to say, for underground hip hop heads such as ourselves, I want to say, and any listeners, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. I want to say that the Bush Baby joint when he sung the hook was the first time I heard him. But the first time I heard him, like rhyming some might have been on this Big Brother joint on Stakes is High, but I heard his voice on the Bush Babies first, but I didn't know his name was Mos Def. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know his name was Mos Def until I think 2 years later after We Run Things and all that on the Bush Babies. That's when I think I remember his name being Mos Def on the De La Soul album. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, and we'll get to that, Common was on The Business also in the middle of Common's heyday as well. But yeah, I think for me, man, I think my first time hearing Mos Def was on rhyming and whatever was on Stakes is High.
Yeah, man. I think that's what makes it such a prominent album in hip hop. Not only being released in the climate it was released, kind of being underdogs, because maybe up until recently, if you were considered an old school artist, you were basically done. Like, even if it was your old fans will move on from your music. You know what I'm saying? That hadn't been the case in hip hop. Usually, like, there was nobody who was clamoring for, a new Kurtis Blow album in like 1990 or 90. No. People had been moved on. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Nobody was clamoring. They were barely clamoring for Run DMC around that time. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. So it's kind of one of those things where they got 3 albums, you know what I'm saying, critically acclaimed, classic, some people would say. And the hip hop changes so much. And this is, like you said, this is at a time where everybody's dropping heat and hip hop is making money now. They really get caught up in a transition period. That's a transition even for the current artists, let alone artists that would be considered old school. So for them to, like you said, to choose to change their sound by not going with Prince Paul this time around, to be more aggressive with their lyrics without sounding like De La Soul, like, even though their subject matter was a little edgier, it wasn't like they all of a sudden became gangster rappers. You know what I'm saying? They honestly became more of themselves. You know what I'm saying? They became more of the men they were. And I think that's what endured them to fans, and what kind of, carried them not only through that 1996 time and the beefs and everything else, but also through today, where, they still have a huge following. They still make news with, the streaming services and the beef with Tommy Boy Records and all that. So, Tone, what are your favorite songs on this album? And is this a hip hop classic? Is that like just a no-brainer?
So my favorite songs, man, the title track, Stakes is High, is an amazing song. And of course, this guy from Detroit, the Detroit named Jay Dilla, who people didn't know at the time, really, he produced Stakes is High. If you listen to that album and that song, and listen to the instrumental also, you will see so many levels of production, man. Like, JD was just really something special. Shout out to Kill in Apartment 5B, because he loved Jay Dilla. And this is one of the songs that I can say, you know what? I see how a producer would listen to him and say, you know what? That's just something different though. You know what I'm saying? Like, Stakes is High beat, that shit's crazy. So Stakes is High title track. Yeah, Stakes is High title track. Sunshine, the last track on Stakes is High, is an amazing song where you'll see, again, I think Dave did a good job of Apostle News in his bag, as they say on that song. Super MCs. Oh man, one of my favorite songs on Stakes is High is Four More featuring Janae. You know what I'm saying? Like, Janae was one of my favorite groups in the mid 90s. Their first album was a classic to me. Then their second joint was underrated. So yeah, Four More. I always say to people that Stakes is High is my favorite De La Soul album. I can't say it's the best because it depends on what you like. People think that 3 Feet High and Rising is a classic. I believe so as well. I do believe that De La Soul Stakes is High is right there, the cusp of a classic. It's definitely a De La Soul classic. I think it's the East Coast classic. You know what I'm saying? You know, if someone calls it just an overall hip hop classic, and I know I'm putting all these categories, I wouldn't be mad at it, man. Like, it had that feel today when I listened to it straight through. I'm like, damn, this really was a special album that came out in the time of so many special projects and the rise of so many artists, man. So yeah, man, I might give it that step, man. And those are probably my favorite joints on it, man. What about you?
For me, man, it's a lot of the same stuff you mentioned, man. Stakes is High. The beat just draws you in. It's kind of like a no-brainer. Just sets the tone. Just a very dope record. Sunshine, another record that just one of them records that just feels good when it comes on.
Yeah.
And has perfect lyrics to match. Just a really very. It basically it's the type of song when you hear that record, you know you're dealing with artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can call them rappers, you can call them MCs, but it's something to be said about lyricism on that level with that kind of production and bringing it together. That's artistry, to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Also, It's So Easy. Yeah, I heard that first on a mixtape, and when I heard that joint, I was like, "Yo, this is De La Soul." Like, this shit is hot. Like, you know what I'm saying? I couldn't believe it. Again, in that climate, I'm listening to everything else, and De La Soul is constantly knocking on my door. Like, yeah, you hear this one? Did you hear this one? Did you hear this one? It's all on the same album. The Business featuring Common. Just a very dope album. Like Tone said, man, it was. I think it's on the cusp of a classic. I think it's easily one of their best albums, if not their best album. I think there's a lot of people who will call it a classic. I can't say universally because I think honestly, I think there are a lot of people who just hadn't heard it in its entirety. I think they just know a lot of the records because, again, if you was in a hip hop around that time, you had a lot of hip hop and to go through. And, you know, I know for me around that time, you know, I was going into my sophomore year at college. So there was just a certain energy. You know what I'm saying? I'm thinking I'm gonna party even harder this time. You know what I'm saying? And I was kind of focused on those records. But every now and again, you know, you get that mixtape because you hyped and you hear that De La Soul record come on. You like, yo, this De La Soul is hype. Like, you didn't hear that joint after the Biggie joint. So definitely feel like, you know, I'm mad if someone called it a classic. I wouldn't even debate you on that at all. What do y'all think about De La Soul Stakes is High album? Do you like it? Do you love it? Is it a classic? Maybe you've never even heard it before? What do you think about that time in hip hop when it was released? You know, was it one of the albums you went to first because you were a big fan of De La Soul? Did you forget? Did it get lost in Muddy Waters and Beats, Rhymes, and Life and Reasonable Doubt? And It Was Written and all these All Eyes on Me, all these albums that are dropping left and right, East Coast, West Coast beef. Leave your comments in the comment section below, man. We'd love to know what y'all think about that and get all your thoughts and anything that, you know, you feel like we didn't mention that was vital to this story. Please leave it in the comment section because we check all the comments. We like to talk about it just as well. Now, we get to the point in the show where we like to recommend something you should go back and listen to. And man, I got one that came out not too long ago. Actually, I don't have the update here, but I know it by heart anyway. It was released in 2011, I believe. It's Mobb Deep's EP that dropped not too long after Prodigy got out of prison. It's called Black Cocaine. Production being done by or being handled by Havoc Alchemist. I had this joint for a while. It's been sitting on my iTunes. I scroll past it sometimes when I'm going to Infamous or Murder Music or going to something else. I just see the cover. And then a couple of days ago, I decided to hit play. I hadn't hit play on that in a minute. And I forgot how dope this was.
Yeah.
I was almost shocked at how dope it was, because a lot of times when we talk about Mobb Deep, obviously we talk about Infamous and Murder Music and all the classics, all the earlier music, but we seldomly talk about the later releases, the ones that were dope, like Free Agents and stuff like that. But the production is nuts on this EP. Again, It's only 5 songs, but it is worth the listen. Black Tone, I was going to call you Black Tone, like this is American Gangster episode. So Tone, Mobb Deep, Black Cocaine. What did you think about it when you heard it, and what's your recommendation for this week?
Man, shit, when I heard it, I was like, man, I wish it was some more songs. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause I was like, yo, if these the first 5 tracks of a Mobb Deep album, add about 6 more, 7 more, we good. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I thought, man. It sounds fresh. P was hungry again. You know, that EP had one of my favorite Mobb Deep songs in it called Conquer. That track, Conquer, is one of the hardest beats I ever heard. They flowed just so precise over top of it. Yeah, man. Black Cocaine, man. Yeah, it was very dope, man. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man. Shout out to Mobb Deep, man. Rest in peace to Prodigy, man. One of my favorite rappers. My recommendation for today is 2004 Murs and Ninth Wonder's 316. They got the title because that's Murs' birthday. This is also the first full-length project that Ninth did outside of Blood Brother at the time. You know, him hooking up with Murs from the West Coast. We was kind of like, who is Murs? Because honestly, man, before Ninth did that joint with Murs, a lot of us here in North Carolina, we didn't know who Murs was. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people on the West Coast, on the underground, knew Murs and liked Murs and stuff like that, but we didn't know who Murs was. So when Ninth was like, yeah, I did an album with a dude named Murs, man, you got to check it out. When I heard it, I was like, damn, it's nice. You know what I'm saying? And he had the song Bad Man and The Rain, you know what I'm saying? And then a track called The Animal with Fonte. And woo, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the last track on The Animal, man. Like, but the production was good, man. I think All Music gave it 4 stars. It got very good ratings on from every professional, you know what I'm saying, critic. It was a very good album, man. It was so good that the fans wanted more. And, you know, Ninth and Murs ended up doing about 5 albums together. You know what I'm saying? So it was a start of a nice run for them. But it started with 316, man. It was a very good album. It was 10 tracks. No complaints on it, man. It was no filler. Very solid. Murs was very solid lyrically. Again, I had never heard of him before. I was like, yeah, this dude Murs can rap, man. He's funny. He got personality on the mic. You know what I'm saying? I can see how he would have a little underground cult following. And yeah, man, I get it. You know what I'm saying? I thought it was a dope album, man. Yeah, what did you ever hear that 316?
Yeah, man. I remember when it dropped. I wasn't. What year was that? That was 20.
Yeah, it's like 2004.
2004. Yeah, in 2004. Yeah, earlier than I actually thought. I thought that joint was more recent than that.
No.
But I remember when it came out, because I was still living in Baltimore and I was working at the radio station. I was no longer the host of the hip hop show, but I was kind of serving as like executive producer. So even though I wasn't as involved with it, like, you know, we would get music in, and I remember I would see that album cover all the time, and I kept thinking to myself, like, what the hell is that? And I
Right.
just remember, like the whole shout out to Ak had told me, his name and Murs, and I remember playing some records off of there. And I just remember feeling like, man, this is dope, because I had heard of Murs before, but I wasn't into his music that much. But I think his pairing with Ninth Wonder, which we saw later with the other releases, especially the one they just released, which is nuts. I think they're just a perfect duo. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think his lyricism, his personality shines brightest on Ninth Wonder's beats. You know what I'm saying? They just make a perfect combination. Yeah. And I think this album was a testament to that. I don't own it, so this is another joint that honestly I haven't heard in so long. I got to go back and listen to it as a recommendation as well. So definitely going to do that. But if you're watching or listening, go out and check out Mobb Deep's EP, Black Cocaine, and Murs and Ninth Wonders 316. Two we only recommending joints that we think are worthy of your time. But that's going to do it for us. This podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. All you got to do is search for Hip Hop Now Podcast, type those words in, and you will find that. Hit subscribe, and in that same feed where you see Hip Hop Now Podcast, you also will see That Time in Hip Hop. Or if you listen into the audio, check out the video. Just search for That Time in Hip Hop. There's about maybe 44 videos, so you can check out the entire playlist and just walk down memory lane and get details on these albums, and albums like De La Soul's albums like Ready to Die, all of it. More than that, if all of that was a lot to take in, all you got to do is visit intothedome.com, and right there on that page you will find not only the audio but the video version of this very podcast, as well as a ton of articles written by the homie Tony, a lot about hip-hop, a lot about music in general, and a lot of thoughtful articles that give you more insight into the artists you love, or you heard about, or you heard your papa talk about, you heard your mama talk about it, whoever. You know what I'm saying? Intothedome.com. Until next time, y'all, go out and support real hip-hop. Peace.
Peace.
Drop it on the random.